Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowships for New Americans information session on optional exhibits and recommendations. We are really excited to be talking through this specific part of the application today. And we are going to go in depth with some of our fellows who actually applied and had to think through these questions for themselves. And I'm very happy to have Craig Harwood, our director, on to provide his insights and feedback, and Yamilet Lopez, my colleague, who helps answer questions and support applicants throughout the process. And I'm Nika Landau. I'm the Director of Communications. If you are live with us, you can put any questions you have in the Q&A, and you can actually upvote questions so that we can see which questions are most pressing. And you can also drop notes in the chat. We would love to hear where folks are coming in from. So if you are here in the chat, we'd love to hear where in the world you are. And if you'd like to share your country of heritage or your family's country of heritage, we'd love to hear that, since we are a fellowship for New Americans. And why not your field of study? So without further ado, I would love to introduce you to the fellows that we have on the call today. I just would love if we could hear what you're studying, and you're a little bit about your New American background, and maybe one fun fact about the Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowships that you like to share. Ananya, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ananya Agustin Malhotra. Use your pronouns. I'm delighted to be here with you all. Thanks to Nika and Craig and Yami for hosting this webinar and inviting me. I'm a 2024 PD Soros Fellow. My New American heritage is my mom's from the Philippines and my dad's from India. So I have those mixed heritage. And I'm a first-year law student, actually wrapping up my first year in law at Yale. And a fun Paul and Daisy Soros fact is that uh, 1 year passed, I'm not sure which year, but on the weekend that we get together in the fall during the conference, I believe some fellows got a shared Daisy tattoo because they were so excited about meeting each other. And I honestly felt after the weekend, I was like, I could be convinced.
I love that.
Um,
Great lore. Thank you so much. All right, Leslie.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Leslie Ponce-Diaz. I'm currently an MArch 2 master's student at Harvard Graduate School of Design. I study architecture, Masters of Architecture too. And yes, I am a child or a daughter of immigrants. Both of my parents are immigrants from Mexico. And that fun fact is so good. Like I don't know if I can beat that. But I mean, I said yesterday, and I'll say it again. I think like as you kind of progress in your higher education, I feel as for me, I've found less and less kind of like maybe people that look like me or people that also share similar experiences. So it's been really nice to be in a fellowship with people who are also potentially first generation, first in their family to graduate from college, etc. And it's been super awesome because I've met people from all different walks of life and different fields, and to kind of connect with that, it's been truly touching. So I still am connected with people from California, from Philly, from all these different places. So it's really cool to hold that and carry that as I pursue my studies. So yeah.
Amazing. And Desmond, our third fellow on with us in the lab.
Hi everyone, my name is Desmond Edwards. I'm a 2023 PD Soros Fellow. I'm currently in my third year at Stanford as a PhD student, though I'm adding the MD, so I guess now I'm technically an MD PhD student, focused on infectious diseases. I'm originally from Jamaica, so I was born there, I grew up there, and I came to the US in 2018 when I started my undergrad. And then one fun fact about the fellowship, I don't know, I guess I feel like I've had a very unique experience in the US in that most of the people that I've been around, at least that I've formed very close connections with, are themselves immigrants or children of immigrants. And so being in the Soros community kind of feels like an extension of the friend groups and connections that I had already made.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, we are so lucky to have the three of them with us today, and I'm going to run through a few basic pieces of information, and then really I'm going to be turning the questions over to the fellows and pulling Craig in to get his advice and thoughts. So again, put any questions you have in the Q&A. We are recording, so you'll be able to come back to this. But yeah, super excited to have the fellows share their advice. You do not need an institutional endorsement from a university to get this fellowship, which I think makes it really special and unique. But that also means that our applicants just get different pieces of information. So the reason why we have these information sessions isn't to overwhelm you with information, but it's just to make sure that all of our applicants are on level footing coming into our process. So we really appreciate the fellows taking the time to share their advice, since we know that is so important. I think you all know, but just in case you don't, this is a graduate school fellowship for immigrants and children of immigrants. It is merit-based, and you can find out all about our eligibility and our process on our website. We do have other info sessions. Today, we'll just talk about the exhibits. I won't go into depth about our selection criteria, but it is important to keep our selection criteria in mind when you're thinking about your optional exhibits and your recommendations. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that. But this criteria is listed on our website, and it's just a helpful framework to think about how are the things you are bringing up connecting to these specific criteria. And our application process happens online, and there are many different components of the application, as you can see on this slide. Today, we're really just talking about these final two, the optional exhibits and the recommendations. And of course, we have another session that is on our YouTube channel on the essays. But the optional exhibits and recommendations can be challenging, so we really wanted to make sure you had some specific info. The selection process that we use, because we are a merit-based fellowship, we're not need-based, we have a holistic review process. We don't have any quotas. We're not looking to check off any boxes to make sure we have a certain number of people in any field or group. So we have this holistic review process, and we use this concept that we call the distance traveled to review applications. And the thing is, because we're merit-based, but we have applicants coming from such vastly different backgrounds, we like to think of the opportunities and obstacles that an applicant has faced, and we like to be able to understand their accomplishments within that context. So essentially, if somebody came to the US 2 years ago and English is their fifth language, we might not expect their English to be as good as somebody who was born in the US. Or if somebody didn't go to high school in America, we might not expect their high school resume to look like one that would come from the US. So this is what the concept of distance traveled means. And it's really important to think about that as you're thinking about your recommendations and your optional exhibits and your essays as well, because you are going to be putting your whole self into this application. Maybe not everything, but you're going to be sharing probably more than you are used to in an academic or professional setting, because we're trying to understand the full context of who you are and what you're bringing to the table. And I'm sure the fellows can share a little bit more about that. So we're going to start by talking about optional exhibits, and the optional exhibits are truly optional, and they're organized, they should be really well organized and labeled. I think there are slots for 5 of them, which are just kind of open slots where you can upload a PDF or any other types of documents. And you want to make sure that you're not just kind of uploading a flurry of things. You want it to be really clear what you're uploading, and you really want to be thoughtful about what you're uploading. And when I say that they're truly optional, I mean that they're optional for you. Many of our fellows do not submit anything in this section. And they're also optional for our readers. So our readers do not have to go through your optional exhibits. It's possible that one reader might not go through them and another reader will go through them. Or let's say you get to the interview stage, it's possible that at that point, several people will have gone through your optional exhibits. But if you submit, let's say, a YouTube link to a 30-minute video, it's also possible that the reader might take a look at it, but they're not going to necessarily watch the whole thing. But they are not required to follow that link. So I do think a well-organized list that has priorities on it is helpful. Craig, do you want to speak anything to, like, when you think of a well-organized optional exhibits, like what are some things that come to mind for advice for applicants?
Yeah, well, I think that, I'm just going to reiterate some of what Nika said, and that's that, they are optional. And so don't include things just because you feel like, oh, I can't leave that space empty. And don't feel like you need to include 5. Include what you think would be really helpful. And we can get into what would be helpful a little bit later. I think it's sometimes helpful. Let's say you upload, you have a link, but maybe you want to put it on a PDF. A page, you upload like a PDF page that had a description of where you're linking to. Like, this is a link to my visual art portfolio or something, just so we know where we're going, and we have a sense of what we're looking at. And I do think that putting them in order of priority for you is important. The first link is the one you care about the most. And then, or the first exhibit is the one you care about most, going down to the least important. And just to sort of slightly reframe what Nika said in terms of the, whether the screeners will look at them or not. I like to say that to the screeners, you should view the optional exhibits in as great or as little depth as you feel you need to assess that applicant. And sometimes the other materials will be extremely helpful, and you won't feel like just skimming the optional exhibits will be fine. Also, sometimes a screener is not in your area and won't understand, let's say, a research paper you've submitted. So it wouldn't be helpful for them to really spend much time reviewing that. So the screeners have the sort of the authority to view your optional exhibits in as great or little depth as they feel is necessary to assess your application.
Perfect. And then in terms of what to consider, I put a few examples on this slide, examples of your work, articles about you or your impact, artwork or visuals from a portfolio, excerpts of creative writing, a link to a video, and maybe, again, nothing at all. So it's really what kind of speaks to you. Some people do include anything relevant to hobbies that they're very passionate about. This is a chance to sort of round out your application or provide credibility for things that you have provided or that you've talked about. I want to start with Leslie asking about we're really just going to ask you each, what did you include in your optional exhibits? And I think the biggest caveat that we give with optional exhibits is that optional exhibits are optional unless you are a candidate in a creative field, because it is so important for us to see examples of your work and to have those examples, because it's very hard for readers to understand what you do without being able to see tangibly what it is that you do. So Leslie, you're in architecture. Can you share with us what you provided in your optional exhibits?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you, Nika. So, yes, I did submit, like, number one for the optional exhibit was my architecture portfolio, and I believe it was around like 20 pages maybe. It was around 10, like it wasn't that big. It wasn't super long is what I'm trying to say. Like, and I was intentional in that because I didn't want to submit like a 72-page portfolio because I don't think that's the right thing to do in my opinion. So I wanted to kind of be concise and I think I had like 20 pages of work from different parts of my academic journey, and from there, after that, I submitted like different kind of screenshots or clips of things that were about news or different things related to my community work that I did. So I would say those two things were important in my optional exhibits.
Amazing. Thanks. All right, Desmond, coming from more of the STEM fields, what did you provide for optional exhibits?
Yeah, so I actually looked back through my application to see exactly what I provided. And I only provided three links because again, unlike Leslie, because I'm more in the STEM field, there wasn't really much, I think generally or broadly appealing content that I could provide. And so I provided three links for articles that had been written about me or about my work. One was from my undergrad institution, and that was the one I ranked the highest, since that was kind of like a senior profile kind of thing. And so it went through kind of all 4 years of undergrad and touched on um, all the aspects of myself that I kind of wanted to portray in my application. The second was from like a summer research thing that I had done, I think my third year of undergrad, which was again much smaller, but again touched on kind of the variety of research that I had done. And then the third was actually from a summer program I did in high school in the Caribbean, and that I chose because it kind of gave a bit more context on the context that I was coming from and coming from Jamaica, going to high school in Jamaica, and kind of the access to opportunities that a small program can have. And so I thought that it rounded out the application and the story that I was trying to tell very nicely.
Yeah, and I think that Desmond and Leslie's, what I'm also hearing about both of them is that Leslie mentioned her community work, and it's super cool and interesting, but it does help paint a story of Leslie's background, and it helps shape like our understanding of her as an architecture student. And not only does it tell us the distance traveled, but it also tells us the potential contribution, right? I mean, not necessarily in full by any means, but it helps speak to the different characteristics that Desmond and Leslie are going to bring into whatever work they do, which really, I think, lends credibility to their application. Ananya, as a law school student, did you have any exhibits? And if so, what?
Yes, thanks, Nika. I had 4 exhibits, and two of them touched more on policy work that I had done in the past, and 2 of them were more representative of history work. I had done a 2 years master's and then worked in policy for 2 years. So I tried to just shed a little bit of light on both of those parts of my background. So first, I think I had a policy paper, and I just put a cover sheet basically explaining what the policy paper was, what my research was. It was about 20 pages long. It was essentially for a policy audience. And then second was I put in a Word doc kind of a compilation of speaking engagements I had had related to my policy work and advocacy. And I just put kind of a brief subtitle with a link and turned it into a PDF before uploading so that the links were still clickable. I think I put a screenshot as well of each of the speaking engagements. Third was I put together like on Canva an exhibit, basically like a 11 page document about an exhibit that I'd helped curate, and that was more of a history focused exhibit that I'd helped to curate in grad school. It was related to my research, but it was also for the community. And then finally was kind of a personal essay that I had written, somewhat personal, somewhat about my historical research as well, kind of just reflecting on that process. So it kind of fit with the theme of the third one. But I put that last, so if people didn't get to it, I wouldn't, it was okay. But I tried to kind of flesh out 2 different dimensions of my application with my exhibits.
Amazing. Craig, we have some questions in the Q&A that I think it would be helpful if you could answer. One person asked, can optional exhibits be from earlier than undergrad? So like something from high school, let's say.
The quick answer is yes. The long answer is I really think it depends what it is, whether it makes sense. I mean, I can see something from high school being compelling, and depending on what it is, I would say I tend to see um, exhibits from undergraduate and more recent in your life, but I can imagine it working, and there's certainly no reason that you wouldn't be allowed to submit that.
Great. And somebody else asked, for research papers, can multiple publications be grouped together into one exhibit?
Well, I think it's probably best, I guess if you wanted to do some abstracts, you could group them together. Technically speaking, no one's going to prevent you from doing that, but I do think it's somewhat um, uh, going against the idea of five exhibits. Like you should be able to pick five items. I think the other thing you should just remember is, there's only so much time that a screener is going to be able to spend with your materials. So, providing three full papers grouped together as one exhibit, that probably would mean that you're including a lot of stuff. And I just don't know that people are going to get through it. Now, I'll tell you what I do see as one exhibit. I often see a list of publications. And then those could even be, hyperlinked. So, I do see people providing, access to their written work and the articles they've published in that format. But maybe that's a little better than just like actually, PDFing three articles together. But again, no one's going to stop you from doing it. It's just more of a decision you have to make if that makes the most sense.
And Craig, if folks have published work or have submitted work, how should they label that, like to let you know what is, sort of where it stands in the publishing process?
Um, well, often that's just going to be at the top of the article, but you could conceivably put like as I mentioned before, let's say you put a link in a PDF, and then before that there is the space for you to just quickly describe, like here's an article I published, or this article is under review, something like that, with this publication, or this has been returned for editing, and then hopefully it will be reviewed, it will be accepted after that. So you could explain what stage the article's at, in a document before a link.
Okay, great. And then, Craig, last question. I have these examples of your work, articles about you or your impact, artwork, excerpts of creative writing or other writing, a link to a video. Are there any other types of, optional exhibits that you think are helpful or that people should be thinking about?
I think this is what I generally see. Sometimes there's like award citations, like maybe you received an award for something as, let's say, an undergrad, and there's like a paragraph on what that award is for. I've seen that as another example. But let me briefly, in terms of like categories, let me briefly just divide these into two categories. Because here's how I look at it. Some optional exhibits go deep and some go wide. And by exhibits that go deep, those are, excuse me, those are optional exhibits that tend to go into your work, that go deeper into the kind of work you're doing, and show the depth and your understanding in your field, like an article you helped write, or like a policy proposal in an area where you're going to be pursuing some kind of policy work. Um, Wide, I would call like those examples of artwork. If you're not going into an artistic field, I mean, if you're going to get an MFA, then that would be going deep in your field. But let's say you are going to law school, but you write beautiful poetry, and you want to include some of that to show the breadth of your interests and your, the the interests that you have beyond your law work. So that would be a way to go wide. So I would just suggest that you sort of think of them in those two ways. Okay, but then what's an award considered? I mean, okay, maybe that doesn't fit so neatly into one of my two categories. I mean, I guess it's maybe going wide unless it's in your field and it's going deep, but forget that. But in general, I would say that's the two ways I look at the optional exhibits. Are you going to go deep or are you going to go wide?
And again, I want to stress that you do not need optional exhibits, and many people are successful without them. So do not feel like you are not a good applicant if you don't have them, or that something is missing if you do not have them. And a lot of times your resume or your CV is going to cover a lot, like things like awards, so or published papers. So again, like, these things might just be in your application already, which is great. And then they're further up in the application. Craig, somebody asked, should you still submit working papers if you co-wrote it with others and the work is not solely yours?
Absolutely. I mean, it's in the scientific fields, like there's sort of no such thing as as a paper that you authored alone. I mean, I shouldn't say, maybe there is, but in general, like these are all group projects. So we understand, and you should just, if it's not clear just from the visual representation on the page, what your role was, like you can see that you were the third author or something like that. You should explain that, what the collaborative role was. But absolutely, I don't think it has to be, singular work that only you had a part in.
And in terms of ranking your optional exhibits, like we're talking about the organization piece, I just to clarify that you can't like rank them on the application, but typically the first one that you upload is going to be seen first by the people who are reviewing the application. The other like way that you might consider doing this is just like you're uploading one, let's say, document and it has 4 links, let's say. So then you would be ranking them just on the page that way. But of course, it depends what you're uploading and kind of how you're going to be formatting them. But if you are, for exhibits, including a very brief description, like 1 sentence, 2 sentences about what you are including and why is really important and helpful. If you're sending someone to a link, don't just include a link. Make sure it's like, this is a link to my portfolio where you will see examples of my architectural work, or this is, somebody just asked if they could submit a YouTube video of their valedictorian speech from high school. Yes, great, but like just include a link of that and why that would be important to you. Okay, so let's move on from optional exhibits, and we will touch on more of that with questions. But I want to get into recommendations, and the basics are that you are required to have 3 to 5 recommendations with your PD Soros application. The deadline for the recommenders is the same as for the applicants. You can monitor the submissions of your recommenders. Like once you register your recommenders in our portal, it will automatically send them an email. And then once they submit, you'll be able to see that in the applicant portal, and you can sort of monitor that to make sure they've submitted. But the big thing that we want to stress is that you should not wait to submit your application until your recommenders are in, because after you submit your application, you can still monitor your recommenders. But we cannot review your application if you do not submit it before our deadline. So you need to, once you register your recommenders, you can just mark that section as complete, and there'll be a green check mark next to it. And then you're done. That's all you needed to do for the recommenders. And if everything else is complete on your application, you can submit. But do not wait for your recommenders to submit, because if you do not submit your portion, we cannot review it if it wasn't submitted on time. And you can start asking your recommenders now. So really quickly, I just want to ask each of you, Leslie, Desmond, and then Ananya, how many recommendations did you each have, Leslie?
Yeah, so I had 3 recommendations, and do I have to say
No, I'll
Just
stop
three?
you. I'll stop you
Okay,
for now. I just want to do a
cool.
quick check on
Three.
that. 3. Desmond, what about you?
Wrong. 4.
4. And Ananya?
5.
There you go, folks. 3, 4, and 5. That is a perfect sampling. So there is not a winning number of recommendations here. You do not need 5, right? 3 is totally great. 4 is totally great. 5 is totally great. You really, the number is important. Of course, you got to hit 3, but after that, you're okay. I'm just gonna quickly say, like, when you're helping your recommenders, consider asking them, for a coffee or a Zoom, especially if you're asking pretty early in the process, or if you're asking for other recommendations from them. This is a great chance to develop your relationship with mentors. And if anything, we want this application process to just help you with your life in general. And your mentors are great mentors and can help you with lots of things. But developing your relationship with them will help you get the most out of that relationship. There's no page limit or a set format for our recommendation letters. So when you're asking them for a recommendation, you're asking them for a letter that is up to them to write. And we always encourage you to ask them, like, what would be helpful for them to write a great recommendation. So, you can ask them whether you want them to share your resume, drafts of essays, a list of your achievements, bullet points about PD Soros. Think about how you can be helpful to your recommenders so that they can help you. Sharing your essays, if you feel comfortable, can be a really great way to help them understand that, what your new American story is, or what specific things you're telling them about yourself, so that they can then support those points. Just like the optional exhibits, the recommendations are sort of they build your credibility. And they're there to tell us, like, oh, all those things that you read in the application, they are true. And actually, let me tell you even more how great these people are, and like specific examples of their great work. So I want to ask the fellows who they asked, and I have a few points on here about who we recommend, but it's definitely prioritizing people who can speak about you authentically, who are not just kind of telling us, like, oh yeah, Ananya took my class, she got a pass. Check. Like, that's not a letter we're looking for. We are looking for somebody who's a real cheerleader for you. And the types of people tend to be academic, like professors, thesis advisors, advisors for service you've done, professional supervisors or collaborators, or leaders or mentors from work you have done, maybe community involvement work, or maybe you've had an internship. So Ananya, can you share specifically who your 5 recommenders were?
Yes. So I had so I was 4 years out from undergrad, for context, when I was applying, or three years out rather. So I asked my undergrad thesis advisor, who knew me well, all of my recommenders. I tried to just choose the people who I felt knew me best, to Nika's last point. My undergrad thesis advisor, a professor from undergrad who wasn't in a law-related field. She was my French professor, but I felt she knew me well. She had taught me in multiple classes. I chose a professor I had in my master's program, and then I chose 2 recommenders from work, the president of my organization, and then my direct supervisor, who I worked with really closely.
I lost the mute button. Okay, Desmond, what about you?
Yeah, so I think very similarly to Ananya. So my 4, honestly, all of them were professors that I had done some sort of close work with. The first and most obvious was my undergraduate PI. I had been in her lab for 3.5 years, and she was she was very young PI at the time, and so she and I interacted a lot, kind of very directly. And so she could speak to both my research competence, I guess, but also kind of watching me develop from the little boy that just got off the plane from Jamaica to what I was when I graduated. I asked one of my kind of informal advisors. Her class was the first class I took in undergrad, and so again, kind of showing that growth and that development. But she could speak more to my leadership within the department, in student government, things of that nature. I asked an instructor slash lecturer whose class I had taken in my first year, and then kind of went back to teach for her for I think 2 to 3 years after that. And then also did a lot of community outreach with her. And so she could speak to my role as an educator, as a mentor, as working on outreach. And then I asked, so that was like my kind of three standard. And then when I was debating whether or not to go beyond the three, I would say as a slight aside before I complete the answer, is that I think it is try to optimize for quality. Like three very good rec letters is much better than three very good rec letters plus one that is because that one that's will really, I think, not call into question, but it kind of diminishes the impact of those three if you had three very strong. So really only add more if you think that there is a like something new that is coming out. And so for the fourth one that I use someone that knew me for a kind of a much shorter time. So this was the professor that I worked with in the summer program in my third year. And I included her for a couple of reasons. One, because all the other three were people that had known me for 4 years. And so I thought it would be good to include someone that can speak to how I come off in a very short interaction. Like, is it like kind of I guess I'm struggling to frame it, like how, I guess the magnitude of impact that I can have in a short space of time. But then two, that professor was also an immigrant and has won immigrant awards. And so I think that she could, as an immigrant herself and going through that experience, could also give some more context on my immigrant experience and kind of navigating the field in that way.
Great. And Leslie, what about you?
Nice, yeah. So yeah, I had three, and honestly, I didn't even think of having more. Not because I was like, oh, three is enough, but I'm just shy. Like I'm just shy to ask people for rec letters. So even doing three, I was like, ah. But so um, I've said this before, and I think it's pretty reasonable about how I went across my application. So I felt like in my studies, I was kind of like I had three different parts of myself when as I was a student. Like I was a student, so I'm one of myself is I'm in the classroom. Another person is the work study student, so I have to work in order to pay for my class, right? So that's like another part of me. And then the other part is like the extracurricular things that I like to do to build community and to really find and meet people who can relate towards my cultural identity. And so those three parts of my education career, I think were really valuable in the way that I carried myself and the things that I believe in. So that's kind of how I framed my recommendation letters as well. So my first letter was the academic one, was my thesis advisor for my architecture project. So she spoke towards my thesis, and she's known me for some time about like the work that I like to do and my aspirations towards graduate school. My second letter, work study letter, I would say in my head or my heart, was someone who he was the director of a nonprofit I used to work for. So on Saturday mornings, I used to teach high school students like design and art stuff. And so I've been working there since I think it was like 2019. And he was able to speak towards kind of me growing as a student, but also me growing in his organization. So even though he has never known me as a student, he knew me as someone as a working student, right? Someone who shows up every Saturday morning and is there. And so for me, that was really important because I mean, I held a lot of jobs on campus in order to be able to pay for my education, and I felt he knew me best in that sense. And my third letter was kind of in my head, I think extracurricular, Leslie, if you could say. I ran a club where it's for Latino students on campus, and she at the time was a director of the diversity and inclusion group on campus. And so she got to speak about this club and the founding of the club and so on. And I think she also was able to speak about, having to be a student or work study student and then still wanting to do community service, like all of that, like she was able to speak towards that experience. So those three for me, I felt were enough to kind of showcase the different layers of my education and the things that I believe in. And yeah, I would say that these three people, like in my undergrad, know me the best, like the most heartfelt, I would say. Um, in terms of me personally, but also academically. And yeah, don't be shy that if like maybe you don't know a lot of people, it's okay. Like I'm the same way, and for those three people, like I felt would serve me more than having more of letters that people maybe have higher names, but they don't know me as well, kind of. So yeah, I would say that that's some advice I would give.
Excellent advice. Craig, what additional advice would you give? What are we missing
Well,
here?
I don't know that I would give additional advice, but I would underscore a couple things I heard. So one was Desmond's comment, which is, I think, spot on, which is 3 letters is way better than having 3 letters plus 1 weak letter. 3 strong letters is great. 3 strong letters and a fourth okay one is not going to serve you well. I just think in general it's a better idea to go with the strong letters and don't feel like you need to have an extra one to impress us, but it's like, oh, I don't know if that one's going to be so good because that will undercut your other letters. So I thought Desmond's comment there was great. And I also think the what Leslie just said about finding recommenders from different places who know you in different ways so you can create this really multidimensional picture of yourself through your recommendations is a really sophisticated approach to doing this. Like how can you get people to comment on different parts of your personality? But I specifically wanted to say this because I saw a question in the Q&A about, can I use 2 people from my lab, like a PI and a postdoc? And the answer is absolutely. Like if that's who you have as recommenders, or those are the people that know you best, you should use that. But you can also take the opportunity to help shape what they're going to write about you. And that's through, as Nika said, set up a meeting, do a Zoom call, spend some time talking with these people. I mean, if you're in a lab, you probably, you're just going to see them around. But still, the point is that you want to talk to them and say, I was hoping you could talk about my creativity and the way I work with other people. And maybe somebody else you would say, I was hoping you could talk about, my scientific, prowess and how I've come up with new ideas, whatever it is. But you could get letters even from people who know you from a similar place that could help shine light on you from a different angle, just like Leslie used different people from who knew her from different places to do that.
Great. And I want to just check in on one point, which is, you can hear from our fellows in different fields that they went about this in different ways. And Ananya also mentioned that where she was in her schooling, that's going to impact who you're going to have. So if you're a college senior, we're really going to expect the recommendations to be from college folks for the most part. Maybe internships that you did during college advisors, college professors. If you graduated from college 10 years before you're applying to PD Soros, then we're probably not going to see as many college recommendations, if any. So the recommendations really do matter in terms of where you are in your career. It's totally okay if you're, 10 years out to not have any college folks. And it also matters what field you're in, because if you're in, let's say, if you're going in to get a PhD, my understanding is that the readers are really going to want to see that you have a recommendation from somebody who thinks you're going to do really well in a PhD and can kind of speak to your abilities in research, or at least your dedication to a PhD, so that we know a PhD is a good fit for you. And of course, if you're getting an MFA or an MBA, you're going to tailor your recommendations a little bit based on those things. So not everybody is going to have the same kinds of recommendations. And we do have candidates who are just, let's say, really deep on one topic, and all their recommendations are people who have worked with them on that topic from a specific period of time, and that is fine. that's great. You know, if those recommendations are really strong and just speak to how amazing you are at that thing that you do, cool. Everybody's different, and you're going to have to kind of take the approach that works best for you. And I just want to say, as somebody who now gets to occasionally write a recommendation for fellows for different things that they're doing, it is an absolute honor to get to write a recommendation for somebody that you adore. And you want to look for those people in your life who are excited. And I know Leslie probably felt nervous, but I bet her recommenders were probably like, me? You chose me? I am someone that you want to write a recommendation for you? Because when somebody that you care about is going and doing big things, it is so exciting, and it is such an honor to be on their journey. So look for those people in your life, because they are going to write the best recommendation, and get them on your team, make them your cheer squad. Whether it's this or something else, like, they're the people that are going to help you through a lot of different things. And so even if it's not for PD Soros, you need those people. And it is something that we see with every PD Soros fellow that they share. They have a village, whether it's their friends and family, or it's this wider village that they've created. You have to have your cheer squad, and everybody kind of goes about that in their own way, but you have to develop that for yourself. It really, really makes a difference for you, especially as you go through grad school, and need that kind of additional support system. I just want to highlight that we do have some resources on our website. We have a guide on, and Yami, if you could put those links in the chat, that would be awesome. We have a guide to PD Soros recommendations and optional exhibits, where we talk with 2016 fellows about what they did. And you can also join our mailing list and jump on social media to get more insights. But I'd love to answer questions at this point. And someone asked, how long are the letters typically? I have a recommender that told me she drafted one that was 3 pages long, but I'm worried that it would be too long or not concise enough.
So I know that some organizations like ours do have page limits. We do not, and 3 pages is, I do see 3-page letters. I see 2-page letters. I see 1-page letters. Like anything, we're telling you to be concise, because you want to make sure to that your screeners have the ability to review all the materials you think are important. But we do not have a page limit, and I have certainly seen many 3-page letters.
Great. So I want to ask, I don't see questions in the Q&A, but I do want to ask, Leslie talked a little bit about feeling shy about asking for recommendations. Ananya, Desmond, Leslie, but I'll start with Ananya. How did you go about asking for recommendations? Like, what did you send an email and then you just sent some information, or did you ask in person? Did you do a call? What was the process like for you?
Yes, first I just want to validate that feeling. I mean, for me personally, I've asked for a lot of recommendations at this point, and it does not get easier for me personally. But I think over time, I've learned exactly what Nika said. People see it as not only part of their job, especially if they're in an academic context, and that they've benefited themselves from recommendation in years past. So they are very used to this process, but also that they're usually really excited about the opportunity. So just want to validate, if anyone's feeling nervous, you're not alone, but it's also part of the process that your recommenders will be familiar with. In terms of how I asked, so because I think I was applying in the summer and I wasn't physically near my recommenders, I sent an email. And I think one of them I did a video call with my thesis advisor, who I was closest with. And I sent kind of a packet of information. So I would definitely foot stomp the advice to really follow the cue of your recommender. If they feel like, have everything I've got, I don't need anything from you except for maybe just a resume and your draft, then that's perfectly fine. I would say follow their cue. For me, I felt that mine could benefit from some more guidance tailored to PD Soros. So I sent along the guidance from the PD Soros website. I also, the program I was applying to, for those of you who will be applying to your program at the same time as the PD Soros Fellowship, my law school provided guidance for recommendation letters, especially for those of you who are going to be using the same recommender to write multiple different letters. That can be helpful to just send it all in one packet and say, here's how you might want to tailor my law school letter better for my PD Soros letter, amplifying, some of these characteristics that PD Soros values. And then I also sent along both of my personal statements as well as a few kind of bullets of how I thought that I fit some of the characteristics that the PD Soros, tends to value. So then my recommenders could kind of tailor it based on how they know me, since mine came from very different contexts, the classroom, more of a leadership or work vantage point, and then from an academic research perspective.
Super helpful. Desmond, what about you? How did you go about asking for recommendations?
Yeah, so I applied in the first year of my program. So I was maybe 6 months out of undergrad. And so again, because I was kind of completely across the country, I asked via email. And I kind of wanted to underscore what Ananya and Leslie and what you've said as well is that yes, in yourself you might feel nervous, but the rec letter writers are more than happy to write, especially if like you give them a lot of notice. Like it's very hard to go to someone the day before the deadline and say, hey, I have this rec letter, I need it in less than 24 hours. That you might get some odd looks, but especially if you give them time, weeks to a month, it's generally more than fine. Um, when I asked them, I sent along the guidance from the PD Source website. At the time that I asked, again because I was trying to give them notice, and I tend to be a bit of a delinquent, I'm almost sure that my essays were not done. But I knew generally the strategy, like what story I wanted to tell, and so I kind of I had a stock letter that I sent all of them, but then there was a little section at the end that was like, can you specifically focus on, so with my research advisor, I said, can you specifically focus on the like innovative contributions I've made? With my instructor that I taught with, I asked her to focus on my outreach, things of that nature. So kind of a broad overview, and then also giving them specific guidance based on what role I wanted them to play in the process.
Great. Great. And Leslie, how did you ask?
Yeah, those are two great points. I think with what Desmond just said, yeah, I think when I asked, I I told them like what the fellowship was about, like what the PD Soros was, and I think with one of my recommenders, I think they asked if we could have a meeting, like a virtual meeting, and we talked a bit more about like the fellowship, um, because I had mentioned that like this fellowship was different in the sense like it was really closely tied to my identity, and like this is why it's important. And I was already in my first semester of grad school, so I wasn't applying to this and grad school at the same time. So I kind of told them like why it was even more special kind of to apply to this and so on. Um, so I would say like that's what I did in the beginning, just to let them know like this isn't just like a regular type of thing, like this is really rooted towards my beliefs and so on. And so I talked about that. But then just as Desmond said, I also asked if they could like please focus on specific things. Like for my thesis advisor, my thesis focused a lot on immigration and these types of explorations towards architecture, and so and et cetera, right? So I think those things are important because yeah, it also like maybe if you read the letter, maybe you're like, oh, okay, like she was talking about this part, and then maybe you look at my optional exhibits and you're like, oh, okay, this is the project that that person was the thesis advisor for. And so maybe you can start to make these connections, right? And then like maybe in my essay I talked about something else, like, oh, okay, so there's like all these connections. So I think in that way, like it really paints the picture of who you are. And for me, I thought that was special, like to be able to connect everything in a way. So if I was to put out all my things out on a board and you start to kind of like get a needle and thread and things are all connected, like that's like that's I think what I thought. So yes, I would say it serves you well to yeah, to tell them. Also too, because I think this is such a special opportunity to apply for. And if you know, as you tie it closely to you, like why not also have your letters focus on something that you wanted to focus on. So yeah, I would say that's what I would say.
Amazing. Thank you. One person asked, what are specific characteristics that you had the recommenders highlight about you? I'm going to assume some of it was around our selection criteria, like creativity, initiative, sort of leadership qualities. Were there any other kind of characteristics that you'd want to add to beyond our selection criteria that you would have kind of brought up?
I think for me, one thing I would say would be like perseverance or resiliency, because to be honest, like when I first started into college, I wasn't the perfect student. Like I didn't get the best grades. I was struggling a lot, being far from home, etc. And so yeah, I think that is something that at least one of my advisors saw me through, right? Like saw me through that light. And is like the distance that they have traveled, they're here now, but to get there, like it took a lot, right? So it took a lot of perseverance and resiliency. And so I feel like if that is part of your story and it's important to you, like I would say that is something honorable to also share, I would say.
Yeah, echoing Leslie, if I can jump in, my thesis advisor from undergrad kind of saw me over a long period of time, and he also saw aspects of my work and my volunteer service, my community service that didn't make it, in a formal way onto my application. And so I think he spoke. I mean, I suggested that if he felt comfortable, he might just speak to that. He knows what I've been involved in, kind of outside of the classroom. So I think that even if that can be an opportunity where if you didn't have a supervisor speak to your, something that you've been involved with, another person from your life who's seen you be active in that and something that you care about can also use that space to speak about it.
Excellent. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. Any final words of advice or specific things that you want applicants to know? And I will start with Desmond and then go to Leslie, Ananya, and then I'll let Craig end us out here with any final tips or words of wisdom.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I was biking home earlier this week and I was thinking about like what I was gonna say on the call. This I think very nice analogy came into my head. And I think it's nice. At least we'll see. But it's really this kind of concept of magnetism, and that at a very high level, how magnetism works is that you have all the electrons in a particular material, and they all align in a particular direction, and that allows the magnetic force. And we leave it at that. And so I think of all applications, but especially this application as like that, in that you have all these little components of yourself that make you up, different experiences that you've had that will point in different directions. But for the purpose of this particular application, as you write your essays, as you choose your exhibits, as you get your rec letters, you kind of want them all to align in a particular direction. And so you can set that direction as the kind of story that you want to tell about your experiences, about yourself, and have that align. And that's how you get this kind of, I think, very magnetic, very attractive application.
Go ahead, Leslie. That was beautiful. Desmond, we'll have to use that.
So beautiful. Yeah, I would say like some tips. What would I say? I think like just like general tips. It can be kind of easy, like or like for example when applying to stuff in my field, like you know a lot of things that maybe the person that's not in architecture might not know of, right? So like for example acronyms like CLT, timber frame, wood, da 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 da, that for us we're like yes, like those are really exciting, but then for the normal person they're like, bro, what are you talking about? So I think like just be mindful when you're applying to things, right? And yeah, just like explain things and try not to use acronyms that like you would only know in your field. Like try to be very like open to what you're saying, because it also just brings the person in, and they're able to feel more like, oh, okay, like I don't know too much about architecture, but I feel like I've learned a lot from what this person has talked about in their application, and I feel like that is really I think that's really beautiful to also kind of join and have them join in into your journey. So I would say that like maybe even have someone read your application who's not even in your field of study to see if they see something they're like, wait, what do you mean by this, or what is this? Just because I feel like sometimes when you're so kind of in your studies or in your field, um it's very common for us to like be in our world and the things that we say, but I think it's even more valuable to kind of step outside of that and honor that that people who are going to be reading this are going to be people from all different vast of fields, and so yeah, you want to represent that honorably. So I would say that's kind of like some advice I would give in terms of the specificity of the things you might talk about in your essay or in the things that you do, etc. Yeah, that's advice.
Great. Ananya?
Yeah, this is all great advice from Desmond and Leslie. I would say when I was in the applicant's shoes a couple of years ago, I was probably just feeling mostly like imposter syndrome and kind of overwhelmed, feeling like, oh my gosh, this is like overwhelming. I'm already behind. I'm, not cut out for this, and there's no chance. But I think those can be some common thoughts if you're going through this process. And for me, the rec letters, are like we mentioned earlier, it's a hard thing to involve other people sometimes, and to have like a positive attitude about it. But I think a reframe that was really helpful for me as you're going through the recommendation process is there's no need to really try to fit into a box. At least that's the approach that helped me. And so if you kind of like take the time to think about what is it that I do have, who has been my cheerleader. It's okay if it doesn't fit into a neat narrative. And to Leslie's point about kind of like weaving the tapestry together, I think that kind of looking through, thinking about the village that has made you, that was really grounding for me. And thinking that, this process is really more than about me. It's about like everybody who's helped me along the way. And that really helped with the feelings of imposter syndrome or self-doubt. And that also helped me to celebrate kind of the different aspects of my work and my life that don't really fit into a box. And so even if I might try, it's okay if you don't know like your narrative, up front. And it really is like a process of talking with friends and family over the course of the whole application cycle, and celebrating the very, very different parts of your life. And your personality and everything that's important to you throughout the whole application process. So that helped me to kind of lean into the fact that, okay, I have these recommendations that come from like all different random disciplines or all different parts of my life. And I maybe don't have one thing, but that's okay. It makes me me. And so I think that that's the beauty of having, 5 exhibit places and 4 recommenders, is that you can really bring everything that makes you you to the fore and just shoot your shot.
Great. Craig, round us out here.
Gosh, you had such great advice from everybody. I guess I'll try to round it out like this. We always tell people that we're looking for your strengths wherever they lie. Some fellowships are going to focus a lot on grades and on test scores, but we're going to look for your strengths wherever they lie. We are looking for individuals who demonstrate creativity, accomplishment, and have the potential to give back to society in some significant way. But again, that will be wherever you feel that is what we're going to focus on. And you should use your optional exhibits and help your letter writers to focus on those things so we can see your strengths as you see them.
Terrific. Thanks for staying with us a few extra minutes. Huge thank you to our 3 fellows. It means so much to us that you're here, and I know that the applicants appreciate it. Craig, thank you so much, and Yamilet, thank you for making this happen. Applicants, we can't wait to see your optional exhibits and your recommendations, and just remember to not count yourself out of this process. We hope that it's a really meaningful process to you and that you get the most out of it, whether it leads to a PD Soros Fellowship or not. We think this is a really valuable process to go through. And we're just so excited that you all are pursuing graduate school and your studies. So thank you for doing that, and keep on doing that good work. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
You.